All right. Shalom. How's everybody doing? May the words of my mouth and the meditation of mine heart be acceptable in Yahweh's sight. He is our strength and our redeemer, and it's in his name, which is his authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect today's message. Aman. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hello to everybody. Not going to be on too long. Got to try and get on the road, so won't be on as long as we normally are. But come on in, come one, come all. Thanks for joining us on different platforms, whether you're with us live later on, watching through TikTok, watching through a link that you receive. We appreciate your presence so very much. And we're going to speak about something very specific and very profound for today to help us to be able to get on our way with certain things. So thank you for joining us again. As always, it's Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant to Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time by being the voice of the voices and speaking the unspoken. And we're thankful and grateful to the Most High. We're thankful and grateful to Him for my wife, the Honorable Amma, who lives a life that's able to be honored. You can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. And she has many different tinctures or different medicines that she creates or has used creative power to bring out and bring into manifestation. The tincture of the month is still I Am Rested. And thank you, everybody, once again, for being on with us. We appreciate your presence. Thank you for those who are watching us once again later on. To the moderators, to the ministerial staff, to SOC. If you're a member, if you're not a member, if you're a human being, if it's one time a many, first time a many, you're with us on a regular basis. If you're coming with us from the workout this rising, dealing with all these holy days, and you've been with us, et cetera, we're appreciative, so very appreciative to be able to have you and have this conversation today. So thanks for being on again. We appreciate you. We honor you, and we lift you up. That being said, we want to get into today's message, since even though we will be on for longer than what many people are accustomed to, we will not be on as long as we normally are, due to the fact that we have to get ready to get on the road and travel. So welcome to everybody. Thank you once again for being on with us. Shalom to everybody. How you doing, Sister Cynthia, Jolene, Tahiti? Let's see. Sister Sharice, Felisa. Oh, I said Felisa already? I think so. Miles. Sister Barbara, Minister Tamara. Can I put my wife's link in? Once again, just look for Bloom and Flourish. Bloom and Flourish. Like bloom, like a rose. The letter N, flourish, like something's flourishing. BLOOMNFLOURISH. Look it up on TikTok. Look it up on YouTube. Look it up. Her email, just add the number 1 if you like to. Bloom and Flourish, the number 1 at gmail.com. Yeah, if you look for those, you should be able to find it. Look it up on her website. Google Bloom and Flourish. If for some reason you can't find it, use our link tree that's on the main, that's on his TikTok page. Go to click on the TikTok page, click on the link tree, and get in touch with us. You get in touch with us and let me know you're trying to get our information, and we'll make sure that we give it to you. I'm out. How you doing, Aphrodisiac? Is it Nina? User Nina? I'm not sure how to pronounce the end of it. I apologize. How you doing? Mr. Tracy, hello. How you doing, sir? All righty. So we're thankful and grateful once again and appreciative for being on, having you guys on with us today. I want to talk about something that really will help you with the mindset of the world that we're in. We're going to say this: they conquer what they create. Right? Even if you're not somebody who's reading what we read for our canonical viewpoint all the time. How you doing, Sister Deborah? How you doing, Brother Alton? And I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Even if you don't read what we read or believe what we believe, even if you don't live by what we live by, culturally speaking, you've heard the term probably that you are more than a conqueror, right? So if you're more than a conqueror, we always talk about that this really, everything starts off with culture. So you'll hear this term that you're more than a conqueror. You'll hear terms like be a victor, not a victim, right? You'll hear a term like, hey, how you doing, Awaken? How you doing, Noni? Is it Noni H900? So you'll hear these terms, right? But you'll sit there and you don't really think about what's coming on there, right? But to be more than a conqueror, to be a victim and not a victor, and all these things that they put out there, you first got to know the language of the culture. Right? How you doing, Sister Stella? Hey, Devin Martin, thanks for being on. You have to know the language of the culture. You got to know what? The language of the culture. How you doing, Miss Pierce? See, if somebody says be more than a conqueror, you have to think to yourself, who are the conquerors? If you're more than a conqueror, then what is and who is a conqueror? Right? We don't think about that part. And if I'm going to say I'm more than a conqueror, if I'm going to be told I'm more than a conqueror, how you doing, Brother Jermaine? If I'm going to be told I'm more than a conqueror, then I have to say to myself, am I a conqueror? Am I less than a conqueror? Am I more than a conqueror? Who is this conqueror? And what qualifies me for this statement that I am more than a conqueror? How you doing? Please forgive me if I say this wrong. I believe Amar, is it Amaru? Oh, okay. Amar Reborn. I think I got that correct. Right. So somebody will tell me I'm more than a conqueror. So then question, if I'm more than a conqueror is what I'm supposed to be better than, right? Conqueror is what is the low end of the spectrum for me, right? Somebody who conquers, they're on a low level, but I'm more than that, right? They're on a low level, but I'm more than that. Y'all catch that? They're on a what? They're on a low level, but I am more than that. How you doing, Sister Betty? So the person who's concerned about conquering is small to me because I'm more than that. The person who has to win every argument is small to me. Why? Because I'm more than that, right? The person who creates a victim, but then says be a victor or not a victim, but I can't be a victor unless I create victims. I'm more than that, right? I have to think highly, more highly than that. My standard of living, therefore, has to be lifted up higher than myself in order for me to be more than what, right, looks down upon. See, the conqueror says, in order to be taller than you, I have to cut you off. I have to cut your legs off. And when you can only stand on your stumps, then I can say I'm taller than you. But in essence, I'm not taller than you. You're not taller than me. You basically cut me down. You are still just short. All you did was you made me shorter. That's the conqueror mentality. I will make you short so that I will be tall in my own eyes, when the reality is you're still short. You didn't grow. You cut. You didn't grow. You maimed. You didn't grow. You cussed out, but you didn't grow. You talked poorly about, but you didn't grow. A lot of people do that. They cut down something so that they'll feel taller. Therefore, they've conquered it, but the conqueror really is small. See, I'm supposed to be more than a conqueror. And you live in a society today where people conquer everything and tell you that you're not as powerful if you do not conquer. Well, what if you're more than a conqueror? Right? What if you are more than a conqueror? Right? We got to have a conversation. Yeah, you said if they can't cheat, or if they can't win, then they can't cheat. And if they can't cheat, they can't win, basically. Right? What if I'm more than what they say? What if my ways are attached to a standard higher than me, which means that the standard I'm looking for, his ways are not my ways, nor his thoughts are my thoughts. As high as the heavens are from the earth, are his ways from my ways, and his thoughts from my thoughts. And if I'm going after that and I'm being lifted up way more than the conqueror, right, then I'm more than that. Why am I trying to be what everybody else tells me I need to be? I'm going to change this angle, something's messing with me. Right? Why am I trying my best to live my life by some standard that really is not for me anyways? Right? Why is my standard of eating different than what's healthy for me? Could it possibly be that I'm more than this, that conquerors eat a certain way, but I don't? How you doing, Brother Vincent? Right? Could it be possible that I'm trying to live my life by something, a standard that's not great enough? You're more than a conqueror. Right? Yeah, exactly. That worldly mentality. We talked about that yesterday, right? Worldly qualifications. What qualifies somebody to be president of the United States? Not much. The answer, not much. Right? You can be on cocaine and be the president of the United States. If that's your standard, if that's what you're looking for, then you can go ahead and keep that. I don't want that. That doesn't have anything to do with me. Right? I don't need anything to do that. I don't need or want that to have anything to do with me. I am okay without that being part of what I'm dealing with. I am definitely all right. Have you thought about that being more than a conqueror? Right? Now, what is a conqueror, though? We have to go back to that. What, in fact, is a conqueror? What, in fact, is a conqueror? If I have to be more than a conqueror, then I have to figure out what this conqueror is. See? So who is a conqueror? Is the United States Corporation a conqueror? How you doing, Brother Vincent, if I didn't say so already? Is the United States Corporation a conqueror? Is capitalism, capitalist, elitist, are they conquerors? Watch this. We got to be honest. We got to be real. We have to even be real and realize that, what, some of these people who are motivational speakers are conquerors. Everything, conquer the day, seize the day, no excuse. If something happens to you, it's because you didn't do. There's nothing there. Don't worry about changing your community. Change yourself. Don't worry about this. That's conqueror talk. Uh-oh. And look, I do motivational speaking, so I get it. But real talk, people are so in tune with being conquerors that they haven't realized you're supposed to be more than that. You are more than a conqueror. Why am I trying to be on conqueror status? Girl, when I get a man, he gonna be a conqueror. Oh, you don't say it like that. Girl, I'm looking for him. He gonna be tall, he gonna be dark, he gonna be handsome, he gonna make this much money, he gonna have this house, he gonna make sure you take care of my bills, he gonna blah, blah, he gonna do this, he gonna conquer. But do you want more than that? Because you're gonna need more than that for your relationship. Bruh, I'm telling you, man, she fine. She got them hips. Her skin is nice and chocolatey. She got all that, man. She got an hourglass figure. Well, what? But do you want more than that? Because you're gonna need more than that. How you doing, Sister Shante? Excuse me, Minister Select Shante. You're my sister, but I'm supposed to say different. I apologize. Right? Exactly. Conquerors don't worry about building, and if they build anything, conquerors build shrines to themselves. We would call conquerors, as much as people say they want to be conquerors, conquerors are narcissists. Respect to you, Tin Man, right? The conquerors are what? Conquerors are narcissists, right? Only somebody who creates victims would tell you not to have a victim mentality. I defeated you, so to speak. I lied to you. I cheated. I'm all about war and beating things down. And yet I'm going to tell you that you shouldn't have a victim mentality, the same mentality I created. And I lied to you and I told you weren't nothing. But be a victor. But victors make victims to be victorious. But we live in a world where they want you to be conquerors. But you should be more than a conqueror. What's your thought process today? Is your thought process to conquer the day, or is your thought process to overcome anything that might try to conquer? Mm-hmm. Gaslighting. Right? What is your goal for today? Is your goal for today to what? To conquer, or to be more than a conqueror? Watch this. In this society, conquerors create things in order to conquer. See, even if there's nothing to conquer, they must create a scenario in their mind that says that I need to conquer something to make me better than somebody else. And somebody say, where you get that from? Look at how the sports figures that are lifted up. For example, Michael Jordan, somebody who conquers people in prison, somebody who conquers people as far as ownership, somebody who conquers people as far as on the court, somebody who conquers things as far as his regular life and all these things. That we love the conqueror. We love the conqueror. We love the conqueror. Okay. Michael Jordan's famous for, and Kobe Bryant is famous for, and even LeBron James to a certain extent is famous for manufacturing something to feel like they need to conquer. How you doing, Sister Marion? Hopefully you and Jimmy are doing well, right? Or doing better, right? You know, these more than conquerors, right? Michael Jordan, we love to conquer. He just made up stuff. He just made up. See, even if there's nothing there to conquer, a conqueror, see, that's that horseman. You start looking at the four horsemen. First one, you're dealing with people who are conquering just for conquering's sake. Those first two horsemen, dealing with somebody making money off of conquering and somebody who's conquering just for conquering's sake. Some people, that's all they do is they conquer. They don't have any ability to do anything else. They think it's all about them. They must be in control of everything. That's what drives them. Michael Jordan plays somebody and would tell himself a lie so that he would be able to manufacture enough anger and hatred to be against somebody. You said, look up the day Michael Jordan's dad died for what? I'm sorry, what's the, no offense. I don't know the purpose of what it has to do with the stuff. But hey, how you doing, Keith? Right? Like, so, you know, Michael Jordan would be like, okay, there was this guy in high school and he made the team and I didn't make the team. And then they studied and they found out that the man he was talking about, that name that he gave and everything like that, guess what? That man and everything that he was dealing with or talking about, he didn't exist. He made it up to say that's the reason he didn't make the team, because they wanted some guy on the team that wasn't as great as he was. The reality is that Michael Jordan, even though he was really great for his age anyways, like he was mad that he didn't make the varsity team as a freshman or something like that, which is something that's common. But he didn't make the varsity team as a freshman. And so that was his drive. He made something up so he could conquer. So if you got to lie to conquer, you got to start asking yourself a question. Is conquering worth conquering if it means that I have to lie and I have to ultimately not live in truth, but live in a fallacy? Some people say, yeah, because you get to have Michael Jordan's life. But you can't take all the stuff that you got from conquering with you once you go to the other side. And that's the mentality that causes Michael Jordan to then go and say, man, you know what, in North Carolina's, my coach, wouldn't let me play enough and this and that or whatever, but you were winning championships, or, hey, this person was weak, or Isaiah Thomas and I never had any blah, blah, but then like you lied and you didn't let Isaiah Thomas play on the dream team. You lie. Hey, I've been to places. I've met people in Chicago. I've met some of the dancers in Chicago, being real, right? Who like strippers and stuff, who were the people who were around Michael Jordan when Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen would show up to the clubs while he was cheating on his wife, right? But then he would get in front of you and I on television and stuff and act like he was the clean-cut family man. Why is my tongue green? Not green. Anyways, if that was your goal, just to give me a stick my tongue out, I guess you did well. But once again, we're dealing with these different things. Right? So we're dealing with a lot of different things where people are conquerors. They have a conquering mentality. And when we have a conquering mentality, we have to realize that a conquering mentality means that you will, by any means necessary, be in charge, not get to where you want to be. Your goal is to make sure that you paint his story, right? To make his story involve you. How you doing, Brother Jeremy? Right? So conquerors, they create what they create things, and then they conquer what they create. How you doing, Schway's Banks? Thanks for being part of the community. Conquerors, they create things, and then they conquer what they create. This is why a lot of people have an issue with God, because God and Elohim is different, and God and a Netzer is different, right? Netzers are Kemetic, and God and deities or deists are different, even though now those cultures have mixed and matched so much that you can't really tell as much, right? And what the Druids dealt with were different than gods and all this stuff, but people just put them all into the same thing. But they create This is why why people have a problem with God or gods, because they created them and then they conquered them. How you doing, Jacob's regeneration? How you doing? Right? What did I just say? They made up these gods. Firmament is a made up god. You think it's the same as Hezekiah, but it's not. Firmament, Greek god. They made up the Big Bang, which was Gaia originally. Now scientists don't want to admit that Gaia was the first Big Bang, so they don't tell you those things. How you doing, Sister Beverly? How you doing, Queen Sheba? Right? Like they create the god, but then they conquer the god. They created the god only to turn around and conquer, because even the conqueror, right, has to create something that he can conquer. They created the god to make themselves a god. That's why you have people that are deists. George Washington was a deist. Thomas Jefferson was a deist. Benjamin Franklin was a deist. What does that mean? That meant that they believed that they themselves could become a god. The person who started the Mormon religion, he was a deist. He believes that Elohim was an alien from another place that was really good. He became a god. He came here. He made humans. And if you do the same thing that he did, you could become a god. That's what the Mormon church is based off of. That's what Joseph Smith's whole thing was based off of. He created a god. And then he said, if we conquer enough, then we can become our own gods and therefore get to tell you whatever we feel like. How you doing, babe? My wife is on once again. Check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A-N-D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. So we have a problem here. How you doing, Shalonda? We have a problem here where a lot of us are doing what? We are dealing with people who conquer, and they conquer whatever they create. They create things just to conquer. Just like I told you, Michael Jordan would say to himself, he'd look in the stand and he'd say, yeah, you wronged me when we were little children. That person didn't know Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan didn't know them, but he needed to create something to help him to conquer, not to make him taller, but to cut somebody's legs off so that they could say, see, look, I stand over you. Now I'm taller. You're not taller. You just cut somebody off. Right? Right? Conquerors conquer just for the sake of conquering. It's like somebody who likes money, right? That's why there's nothing wrong with money. Money is not the root of all evil, but the love of money. That means I act towards money. I've made it my Elohim, right? Love, I've made it Ahaba. I literally look at it like the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. My life is centered around money. To put money before Elohim, that's the problem. How you doing, Sir Stephen? That's the issue that we have. Right? It's the same thing, right? To worship a creator is not a bad thing, but when you say I'm going to make myself the creator, it even to the extent of conquering the creator, you have a problem. You said they did that in the movie Nice Tale. I don't know if I ever saw that one. I know what you're talking about. I can see I don't know even the names of the people in the poster in my head, but I can see the poster in my head, like a blonde guy with blonde hair, kind of whitish, certain type of afro or whatever, if you will. It's not really afro, but you know what I'm saying. But I can't. I don't think I've ever seen that one. I have to go and look at that one. Right. But yeah, like you make yourself your own god. For example, all these movies that you're seeing, the gods of Egypt. First of all, Egypt. If you're talking about Egypt, maybe you could say gods, but they would have really had deities or deists. But really, you should be dealing with netchers. If you're talking about Kemet, you had netchers. The netchers would have been black. Right? But you conquer it. You create something and then you conquer it. You say, see, I'm the God now. X-Men Apocalypse, right? That's a great example, right? Apocalypse, even though they kind of cheated us on Apocalypse character in the comic book is a lot different, but that's the little boy in me talking. It don't really matter though, but they gave you, in a sense, right? All these movies that are out here. Matter of fact, I can't remember the name. Somebody help me out. What's the name of the movie that came out in the 2000s? I don't think it came out in the 10s. I think it came out in the 2000s. And it was a movie, Greek mythology, had Zeus played by, wow, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. Not Jeremy Irons, but oh wow, I can't remember his name. The same guy that played Rob Roy, he was Zeus. I forget who the guy is that played. I can't remember the guy's name. He was the son of Zeus, half man. He was a half, demigod. They fought big scorpions and rode big scorpions as well. They fought Medusa in it, and they ended up fighting Hades and then the Kraken at the end. Liam Neeson, Clash of the Titans. Thank you. Clash of the Titans, right? Yeah. So when you look up Clash of the Titans, it wasn't Percy Jackson, which is another one, right? We can go into that too, right? That they keep putting this stuff out over and over again. When you look at Clash of the Titans, that movie, the whole movie is basically we don't need the gods. Now you created them, but you don't need them. We are the gods. In other words, we created this thing simply to conquer it. You create things just to conquer. You conquer for conquering's sake. It's in your DNA. It's in your blood. You can't help it. And you're still putting out movies that are trying to remind people that you are God. You are the gods. You don't need anything. You are the gods. You are the God. You are the God. You are the God. You are the God. All these movies. I don't even watch as many of them, but you are the gods. Like, that's the reason why people like Batman. Batman is an actual South American, or maybe Central American spirit, or what people would call a god, even though it's a different culture, but we know, whatever, right? You call him a god. Batman is somebody who's supposed to be a regular man, doesn't have superpowers. Now, he ain't a regular man because look at it, once again, who are the gods? He a rich white dude, came into some money, and then said, you know what? Since I'm in charge and since I'm in control anyways, I might as well use it to be able to help some folk. You are the God. I created God, but then at the same time, I say I don't need the gods. So now Batman has a contingency. If you watched even, I don't know how much you keep up with stuff. I don't really keep up with comics like I used to, but I watch enough of the stuff, at least enough things where I'll read a little bit here and there to be able to keep up with where they're changing things, because they're always changing the characters up to have these gods, like figures that go way back in the ancient times. They're trying to keep them, relevant to the children that are coming so they can keep giving them the same mentality. But when you look at Batman got to the point to where he has a contingency plan that he doesn't trust anybody, right? He doesn't really trust anybody like that. And he knows all these people have superpowers. So he has a whole plan put together to where if stuff went really bad, like if Superman started wilding out, he's already got some kryptonite ready to go in different ways for him, right? If in a way to even block out the sun if necessary in one of the comics and stuff. So Superman can't have what gives him strength. He's got stuff planned to where, like with Wonder Woman, to make sure she can be tied up pretty easily, stuff like that. He's got stuff set up to where he can take off the ring of the Green Lantern. He's got stuff like he got this whole contingency plan where basically if I need to destroy the gods, I can destroy the gods, right? Like everything you're watching is about destroying the gods. Watchmen, that's a great one too. I saw that movie and I read the most of the graphic novel. I can't say I read the whole thing, but even in Watchmen, look up Watchmen, right? And in Watchmen, all these people that are supposed to be heroes, they show how they're really not heroic at all, how they can't have great relationships, how the Joker guy, their version of the Joker basically was a terrible human being and this and that, and how a little girl came from that and her mother being raped and having to go to a place of the guy who's supposed to be like their Superman, supposed to be, all together and loving and all this stuff, ends up being somebody who basically is like the Thanos of the world, right? Before they did Thanos character in that, go look at the Watchmen if you haven't seen that, right? You'll see that they're supposed to be basically like that. He was the Thanos beforehand. Matter of fact, when you watch the Avengers, a lot of people got it. A lot of people didn't realize it. A lot of us, because we don't believe in all that anyways, we didn't get it. But what they were doing with the Avengers movie was that they were basically telling you how all these gods, and then leading all the way up to who's supposed to be the creator of all of these gods are trash. Right? That's what they were fighting against. Right? Correct? If you missed it, that's what they were doing. Right? How you doing, P. Cooper? If I didn't say so already, it was Mr. Manhattan was the character. Thank you. Right? But look at Avengers 1, and forgive me if I'm not going in correct order. I believe I am. Avengers 1, they fought Loki. Loki is what? He's a god. And it took another god who was Thor, who had already been messing up, right? And he was trash too, to be able to help them. But Loki, and then Loki and Thor's got, father is Odin. Odin in the actual real tales, the original tales that they used to tell, is a extremely terrible person in every way, shape, or form, right? But in the movie, they kind of be like, they cover it up. Well, he became a good person, blah, blah. That's not who he really was. But Loki and Thor Both are trash individuals. Thor kind of gets it together when he starts fighting against his own brother, when he starts fighting against the gods. He even will fight against his own sister, right? It's all about creating gods so you can conquer them and say, I don't need them. I am the God. That's what they want you to believe. That's what they're throwing in there, right? Then what's the next movie after that? And you got to look at some of these other movies that happened in between. There was a God that was supposed to be really doing some things, but then he tried to go against the God, Thanos, and Thanos basically, or it wasn't even Thanos. It was, I forget who it was that hit that guy so hard that his head turned backwards. I forget who that was. I'm sorry. I'm trying to keep up with whichever one it was, right? But there's all the different guys. Then you get past that one though. Loki ends up losing 6 people. How many people was it in the Avengers at that time? On there, it was what? Black Widow, woman with no powers, right? But was able to fight these dudes. The Hulk, who's just angry all the time, just ripping everything apart. Supposed to be the smart guy, but hey, sometimes you just got to rip everybody apart. What about it was Iron Man, who was a jerk or whatever, but hey, he had enough money and prestige or whatever. He decided he'd go ahead and change. He was blowing everybody up. So hey, he was a conqueror already. So now he decided to conquer the bad guys. Captain America, need I say more America? The guy, Hawkeye. No, it's not Hawkeye. It's Hawkeye. What's the guy's name? Right? Vision comes later. He's not in the first one. And it was who else? Who am I missing? Oh, and Thor. Right? Who's a god himself. So that's the first one. Second one, right? So they defeat Loki, a god. Then they have another god come. But this one is the god that what? You created. It is Hawkeye. Okay, thank you. Then this one is who? It's who? It's Hawkeye. I'm sorry, Hawkeye. Let me get myself. They defeat Loki. Then they defeat who is the name of the robot? How you doing, Brother Clem? Who is the name of the robot? Right? Who is the name of the robot? That was based, that's when Vision comes to be Ultron, right? And they have to make Vision, who really is a god. He knows bad and good. He's eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The other one wasn't supposed to become what he became, right? And Ultron is basically trying to get what Vision has or whatever, right? But Ultron says that, hey, I realized, see, you created me, and I realized that what you created was something that, you created me, and now I'm going to conquer you. Right. The issue with Ultron wasn't that he was a conqueror. The issue with Ultron is that he was going to conquer them. Ultron was supposed to be something created to help them to be able to conquer others. But now he turned around and he conquers them. You said just like them created one world religion saying they have the same God, then we'll conquer it. Yeah, exactly. They're going to make themselves the God. Right. Which really is not even the case, because if you get technical, then the devil has to be on top. So a lot of them worshiping the devil, but the devil says, the devil's doing the same thing he did with Yahshua in the wilderness. If you would just bow down and worship me, all his kingdoms, I'll give it to you. That's what's going on, right? But they're putting this stuff in the movies, and we're not even thinking about it. They create things just to conquer. This is for conquering's sake. They're conquering for conquering's sake. This is what's going on. So here we have this. We have the conquerors, right? Now we have a conqueror in so we got Ultron. Ultron, basically, who starts making robots and stuff, doing all this stuff, is going to take over the world. He's going to get rid of humanity because humanity is a problem, right? Kind of like, there's too many human beings on Earth, so we should make sure that we realize it's overpopulated. Right? They told us this before. Overpopulated. Too much stuff going on. Too many people doing this, that, or whatever. How you doing, Argray? Right? Too much stuff going on. Not enough food, this and that, or whatever. Question: do people need to eat 3 meals a day? And how many cows and stuff are around where you can actually make burgers and stuff? Question: can I take all 8 billion people and put them in one state in the United States of America? I could. We don't know how much land actually exists and how few people there actually are. And we don't even know if there's really 8 billion people or not. Could be more, could be less. But I could take 8 billion people, put them in Florida right now. I could then say, I'll give you all the East Coast. I could then say, I'll give you all the United States of America. I could then say, I'll give you all of Canada. I could then say, let me put on Greenland and Mexico for that. I say, hey, you know what? What about Guatemala? What about Puerto Rico? What about Haiti? All these places. I could give you all those places. And that's just one continent, right? So we don't even need to eat as much as we eat. And we don't need as much land as we say we need. Now, is there overpopulation? If you got a city, with 10 million people in it, something like that, yeah, okay, we're getting a little crazy. But if you simply spread out, there's tons of lies. I mean, there's tons of lies, but there's tons of space, right? You got Bill Gates who says overpopulation problem, but he owns 3,000 acres of land. Make sure that you grow some food and let people eat, and we wouldn't have no problem. But he'll travel all the way to your continent, and he'll tell you that y'all need to stop having babies. Exactly. It's about control. It's about conquering. This is why you have to do what? What are we talking about today? You have to be more than a conqueror, because there's a group of people who they create things just to conquer. They conquer just about everything. Now they got to create problems in order to conquer those. They got to create sickness in order to conquer that. We'll get you sick. Think about this. We'll tell you, we'll conquer it, your mind and your community so much that we'll say, hey, get rid of dandelions in your yard. They're terrible for you, right? Then we'll give you a spray to kill the weeds or the dandelions to help you. Then when you get cancer from the spray from the dandelions, we'll give you dandelion, but not real dandelion. We'll give you genetically modified dandelion that will give to you as medicine to help you to heal from the weed killer that we gave you to kill the natural dandelion, which, by the way, if we had just simply given you natural dandelion to begin with, you wouldn't have had you would have had a lot less health problems anyways. You see what I'm saying? Said actually fasting is extremely valuable for your body under the right circumstances, of course. Not overpopulated. Europeans have a negative birth rate, so they need to depopulate others. Well, that could be a part of it for sure. Matter of fact, I won't even say could. Right, that's a part of it for sure. You said like the story of the old lady and the mouse, exactly, right? So let's even keep going though. Let me get back, because y'all know I can flow different places. If I'm not careful, we get too far from what the thing is, the focus is. I'm sorry, you said the very thing to your husband. It's so diabolical, evil. Dandelions heal so much. Yeah, they're an officinalis, right? Something that was officially known as something anybody could take. So go back to now the Avengers. You got past Avengers 1, get rid of God. You created a God, Loki, you kill him. You created a God, Ultron, you kill him. Now here comes Thanos, right? And Thanos says, what? I need to go ahead and kill off half the population. I need to what? I need to kill off half the population of the universe. Why? Overpopulation. Here comes the lie. They're throwing this stuff in there. Overpopulation problem. The only way to make sure that people can live is to kill them. But a lot of people miss this. Thanos is supposed to be God. How you doing, Sister Shima? How you doing, Brother Ali? That's who Thanos is supposed to be. Thanos is supposed to be who? He's supposed to be God. Like, go read some of the conversations, some of the threads that go on, some of the chats that happen connected to it. A lot of people said, "Oh, I'd never worship God or Elohim or Elohim or whoever. I'd never worship anybody who would have the ability to be able to just snap their fingers and kill everybody," because they're talking about what's going to happen at Revelation. Yeah, we know overpopulation is a myth, most definitely, right? Yeah, they even teach us through sports games and movies, right? It's a constant thing over and over again. Matter of fact, your sports figures that you like, they even tell you. They call them, listen to ESPN, listen to Fox Sports, listen to CBS Sports, I don't know, listen to HBO Sports, I don't know, whatever you're listening to. Listen to these podcasts, even when they're talking about this. They talk about the basketball guys, the baseball guys, the football guys, the soccer guys. And you build them up so that you can tear them down. Right? You build them up so you can tear them down. You build up these gods so you can tear them down. They couldn't wait to say LeBron James as a teenager, he's going to be the greatest thing. So that the same people say he's going to be the greatest thing could tell you why he's terrible. He'll never be Michael Jordan. You remember when Michael Jordan was, I'm sorry, before that, it was, he'll never be Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant's the greatest. And when Kobe was coming up, he'll never be Michael Jordan. And when Michael Jordan was coming up, well, he'll never be Larry and Magic. And then Bird and Magic. And then, and before that is, they'll never be as great as Kareem and them. And, Kareem, he was never going to be great as Wilt Chamberlain. And Wilt Chamberlain wasn't as great at the time as Bill Russell, even though Bill Russell says that Wilt Chamberlain is the greatest player to ever play. And, and you go back before then, they couldn't be as great as George Mikan. And the list goes on and on and on and on, because you create gods to be able to keep saying somebody can conquer them. That's why people like to record things in a certain culture. In Western society, they love to record things, to be able to say this record and this record and this record, so that somebody can come by and they can break the record. Wrestlers call themselves gods. Yeah, a lot of them. And it's even going back to the times of the Colosseum. Right, like we think that like posters and stuff. I'm sorry. Yeah, I did skip over Dr. J. My bad. Right, he was a god too, and still is. These people are still worship, right? Especially if you win a championship. You win a championship, you're a champion forever, right? A champion of what? We could have another conversation about that. But we think that like when you grew up and you had sports posters on the walls and stuff like that, right? We thought that was something new. In gladiatorial times, those were slaves. And see, when we talk about, like, somebody wrote a book, $1 Million Slave, right? And you'll have our people be the ones to argue against it more than anybody else. How can you be a millionaire? How can you be a millionaire and be a slave? Oh, it's easy. It's been like that since gladiatorial times. Oh, no, it hasn't been like, you just making that up, Kofi. I'm tired of this. They're always talking about racism. But no. Like, these were people that enslaved each other, too. No, that's not true. Well, they had $1 Million Slaves. You think these sports posters are there. They had posters, not posters like this or something similar to this, but they had things that they would hang or even chiseled into the wall of gladiators, right? And they worshiped these people, and these gladiators were slaves, and they would become free. But if you're free, you can't be a gladiator. So these people would give up their freedom to come back and even remain gladiators and still keep killing. Not always kill. It's kind of exaggerated how many people actually died during gladiatorial times, but it was common enough that we should still recognize it as being extremely barbaric. First of all, even if 2-3 people die, yeah, right, like killing each other in the fight, we should consider that to be disgusting. Right, like let's just put that there, right? But yeah, you have these posters chiseled and stuff, and these were posters of slaves, and women were throwing themselves at them. Rich women were paying to have sex with them. Rich men were paying to have sex with them. Yeah, right. You had male gladiators, you had female gladiators. They released animals to fight each other, things like that. Just like you have dog fighting that they tell you they're so against, but you had dogs and wolves. They were bringing elephants and stuff from other countries, from other nations, from other tribes, right? Bringing stuff in to be killed in in gladiatorial sports or whatever, kill or be killed type stuff, men versus animals, all types of stuff, hunters versus animals. They even had stuff where they literally filled up the arena with water and had a ship battle where they fought against each other, right? But they had posters. And the only way that you could be a gladiator is you had to be a slave. If you got your freedom, you were not supposed to fight in gladiatorial games anymore, right? A couple of emperors actually fought, but when they fought, supposedly, even though they would rig it, but supposedly, hey, you can die just like anybody else because only slaves fight, right? Nobody had a problem with it. Nobody had a problem with it. Matter of fact, they had different colors. Like they had different teams. You would see like the green team versus the blue team or the red team versus the blue team. Go read some of these events where they had certain teams. And you had, so the same way you're like, oh yeah, I'm on this. All they had to do was give you a color. Right? If you're a football fan, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna get some of these colors off because I know there's specific colors. They're not as simple as red, blue. So forgive me if I mess up your team's color, but people are still into gladiatorial mindset, right? But if I were to say football, I'm gonna say the football, right? Real quick. If I were to say in football, somebody's wearing silver and black, Who am I talking about? For the football aficionado out there. If I say silver and black, who am I talking about? Right? If I say silver and black, I'm talking about the Raiders. If I were to say burgundy and gold, who am I talking about? If I were to say burgundy and gold, who am I talking about? Burgundy and gold, I'm talking about now known as the Commanders. But back it used to be when they were using, the name of what they used to scalp our people, we would say Redskins, right? Our 49ers, do they call it burgundy? I didn't know they called it burgundy. See what I'm saying? So I don't know everybody color. So maybe they call it burgundy and gold. I thought they called it something else besides burgundy. But okay, if they call it burgundy and gold, so I could be talking about San Fran. I'm learning, or I could be talking about the former Skins, right? The Commanders. Now, if I were to say green and white, I'm talking about the New York Jets. If I were to just say, sometimes I don't even do all that. Sometimes I just have to say a lion on the helmet, Detroit. If I say a star, Dallas. If I say, whatever, right? Like it's all different things. If I were to tell you a man or no, if I were to say, well, I don't even know if they still use this or not. If I were to say a man holding a knife in his teeth, you'd probably say the Buccaneers, right? If I were to say, another person that has a man on there, you might say the New England Patriots, right? Like there's certain things that just by me saying it, right? Well, they did the same thing back in gladiatorial times. And the only way you could qualify is you had to be a slave. Now, you don't even think about it, but every team that's under, or maybe you do, right? But every team that that these people are under, they have to be under what's called ownership. If you're not under ownership, you can't, right? If you're not under ownership, you cannot partake as part of the organization. And you still got these same posters that they had chiseled. And if that person leaves to go into ownership, but he wants to come back, he has to come back as a slave. See Michael Jordan, who did it twice. Once, the first time when his father passed away, it also was because, too, he was gambling so much. He was about to get in trouble. So they said, you had to take a break. He went to play baseball. Came back, won some championships left. Then came back again after 2 years off, played for the Washington Wizards, right? And he played for them. He had to come back again, be a slave, and ended up losing ownership of the team. Now, he was kind of a jerk, and that kind of helped in him losing ownership of the team. But you can't go back and be a player. You can't be in the Coliseum in front of everybody and not be a slave. It's impossible. That's interesting. So you were dreaming about it, right? But you can't be on the team and not be a slave. You have to be under ownership. And they always say you're not going to win a championship if you don't have proper ownership. You say how sports is a big downfall. We have them busting heads instead of problem solving. Yeah, right. There are more people who could tell me Babe Ruth's record or former record for home runs. There are more people who could tell me about Hank Aaron's record for home runs. There are more people that could tell me about that. If I were to say, can you tell me, what scripture says that if you say you love Elohim all day, right? But you can't love your brother who you see every day, right? You say you love Elohim who you've never seen, but you say you love, but you show hate to your brother who you see every day. Can't tell me that scripture. Because those gods are more important. Why? Because they created those gods. And if you create those gods, well, then you have to conquer them at some point. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate that. Right? They create in this system, they create things to conquer them, including their gods. That's the system you're in. You don't want to become a god in this system. Stay under Elohim, be faithful, and be a fellow heir with Yashvai, and be rulers and stuff in high places, and be a fellow heir. Have eternal life. Right? What value is it for a man or a woman to give up their whole right to gain everything in this world and become a god for a fleeting moment, but lose their soul eternally? Why are you trying to be a conqueror? Be more than a conqueror. Conquerors get there. Look, man, there are some gladiators that still have their we can still see their names etched in some little child's bedroom from some rich child that had more rights to things than that slave did. Right? Their name is still etched. Question: what did they do? What did they do for their eternal soul? O.J. Simpson was the man. What has it done for his life? Michael Jordan got all this stuff or whatever. Most of his community says you ain't nothing but a cheating, slave owning, prison getting, whatever. Yeah, just because you're that's a great way, right, of looking at it. Just because you got a lot of compensation doesn't mean that you ain't a slave. Mike Tyson's prison experience is different than everybody else's prison experience. I don't know if he did or didn't, right? Nobody really knows. It seems like he probably did. It seems like the woman was lying, right? And it's not my place to say whether she was or wasn't because I wasn't there. But I'm just here to say, as far as like the Mike Tyson thing where he was accused of rape, and Mike Tyson is somebody who went to prison. His prison experience wasn't the same as everybody else's, right? Like he was having a woman come in there, and he was having sex with her all the time. He ate different meals than everybody ate. He didn't get messed with. And yeah, even though he wouldn't have mind fighting and this and that or whatever, like he didn't have to worry about that as much as everybody else. He had a different experience. Was he still a prisoner? Was he still a slave? And then when he got out, did he basically almost go bankrupt? If he didn't, he might have. I don't know. I haven't really studied all his financial stuff. I've studied enough of it to know that he wasn't really doing that well. And that's why he fought too long at the end, because he even admitted it after one of his fights. He said, yeah, you know what? I'm not really feeling this. I don't love this anymore. I don't really want to do it anymore. Like, I'm doing this at this point just because I got bills. He's still a slave. Y'all just think because everybody follows him around. Now he makes a ton of money and stuff and things like that or whatever, but he still what? He still wanted to become a gladiator again. He became a slave back to what he was. So he got back in the ring with Roy Jones. And probably if they had been actually taking points over there, you probably would have said that like he won. Right. And he's still somebody you probably don't want to meet up with, but he's somebody who was conquered mentally. Customato in his mind, and look, no shade, like Customato, I guess wanted him to become better than what he was, but Customato realized that like training Mike Tyson was going to help him to live longer. And Customato wanted to train somebody again to be heavyweight champion of the world. And he wanted to have somebody become the youngest heavyweight champion in the world because he had that at first with Floyd Patterson. Floyd Patterson ended up losing that to Muhammad Ali, right? Who Customato couldn't stand Muhammad Ali at the time, Cassius Clay, and said that he wasn't as great as what he thought he is, yada, yada, yada. He finds Mike Tyson. Now he has a chance to go ahead and have the youngest champ again and have his name attached to the youngest champ. Right? Y'all remember the movie? I know it's really supposed to be Heracles in the Greek, but we know it as Hercules, the Roman version of it. And y'all remember the movie that came out, the Disney movie? I want to say in the 90s. Was it the 90s, early 2000s? Where they used a whole bunch of like gospel music, urban music and stuff to be able to get that movie across. It didn't do that well anyway. But y'all remember that it was Phil, the guy they called Phil, shortened it. Okay, it was in the 90s, and they shortened his name to Phil. He was the half man, half goat, Baphomet type stuff that pops up later on, even though Baphomet's the reverse, where the goat is on the top half and the bottom. But he was and he was very sexually deviant. And if you remember, he was always chasing girls and was trying to get with was trying to have sex the whole movie. Family picture, Disney. But if you remember, when we're talking about like the gods and all that stuff, in that movie, when you're dealing with the Colosseum piece or whatever, like you're dealing with people that are enslaved. They're telling you that that's the Greco-Roman way, that's the Greek way, that's the Greek mentality. Meg, the one they separated from Meg, right, was there as a slave too. But back to Phil real quick. Phil was the trainer. And if he could train Hercules, right, his whole thing was supposed to be he trained all these people, and all of them ended up messing up. They were messing with Greek mythology. Not all this stuff was the way the Greeks wrote it when they created these gods in the first place, but they were messing with it. They were trying to basically be like, hey, didn't you train Achilles? Everything was great about him except that heel, right? And didn't you train this guy and everything was great except this and blah, blah. And so he doesn't want to train Hercules, but at the same time, what makes him train Hercules is what? If I can train him, then they'll put him in the stars. When they put him in the stars, my name will be great. And that's what happened with Tyson's manager. Or not his manager even, but his father figure. That's what happened with them, is that, hey, you know what? I got one more shot to be able to be great. I'm not saying that he didn't even have any love for Tyson, but see, we often confuse things. See, even Tyson would probably fight me if he heard me talking bad about Custom Auto, right? But I'm gonna keep it real with you. Like, you got Custom Auto, who saw a young man who was very troubled and didn't really train him on manhood. He trained him how to box, and he trained him that he could be something. He gave him hope about himself that he never had, but he gave it to him so he could turn him into a killer, turn him into a gladiator, right? He would kill anybody still to this day. That's why I say he'd probably fight me if he found out what I was saying, right? But, and that's real, but that's because he took a young boy that the streets didn't really care for like we should have. And so he said, okay, I'll take you and I'll show you just enough to make you a slave to what I want, right? And when you are a slave to what I want, it will show that you care. Nobody else in the streets was saying they love you. Your mama was out here prostituting. Who your daddy is, right? Like, this is stuff that he's able to say. But see, look, I took you out the hood. I had you come and live with me. Mike Tyson, matter of fact, when he first came to live with him, he said that he didn't trust Custom Auto. He thought that he was going to try to do something sexually to him. Don't forget, when he met him, he's a young teenager. Been in and out of juvenile. And there's people like Teddy Atlas. If you don't know who Teddy Atlas is, he's a famous trainer as well. And there's people, and he used to be on ESPN a lot. I haven't seen him recently, but Teddy Atlas will tell you straight up, he was somebody who helped train Mike Tyson. Him and Mike Tyson didn't get along to the point to where he had to pull a gun out on Mike Tyson because Mike Tyson was threatening to, basically like beat up or even possibly kill one of his family members or whatever. So he pulled a gun out on him. Because he was like, I might not be able to whoop you, but I'm gonna show you. Because Teddy come from the streets too. Teddy, he a white dude, but he came from the streets too. Now, should he have pulled a gun out on a little child or whatever, even if they were doing, that's to be whatever. But I'm just trying to tell you, Teddy Atlas was around, and he'll tell you straight up that the issues that came out of it was he used to go to Custom Auto, Mike Tyson's caregiver, and he said, yo, you're having to become a great fighter, but you're not training them on what it is to be a man. And one of these days, he's going to flip out because he still got the mentality of what he was on the street. But he just thinks now he just has the confidence he can beat anybody up. At some point, like, life's going to catch up to him. And sure enough, he was right. He said Tyson had to get benched because he was becoming unprofitable. Yeah. Now Tyson's profitable again because people have nostalgia. So what do? Hey, Tyson, tell us a story about da. Hey, can we do a video? Let's do a movie with you. Somebody did an unsanctioned movie with him where they're making money off of his name, and he asked people to not support it. The one that's on Hulu, right? Because he was like, they didn't give. He didn't say because it's not true. He said because they're not giving him any money, this, that, or whatever, right? Now he realizes that, hey, I'm not supposed to be just prostituted or pimped, even though he still looks up to highly to somebody who was pimping him, like Custom Auto. You said how we measure success is important. Are we using the correct measuring tool? Exactly. Once again, are you more than a conqueror? Yeah, he was in Ip Man 3, right? I believe it's Ip Man 3. He does a lot of movies internationally, even if he doesn't show up domestically. Right, so he makes a lot of money off of movies and stuff too. He's got his own weed farm or weed factory or maybe both. So he makes a lot of money off that now too, right? But he was a slave. He hated Don King. Still doesn't really have love for Don King because he's like, Don King prostituted me, but you didn't see it with Custom Auto. Now, why did you see it with Don King, the black man, but you can see it with the white man? But honestly, Don King didn't do what the white man did. The white man came, he took you out, and he brought you into his home, and it made you feel comfortable. And there's something to be said for that. But there's something also to be said for the fact that you're not realizing that you got conquered. And in your mind, you've never become more than a conqueror. You still don't realize. See, Mike Tyson, every once in a while, he'll get emotional and he'll tell you the truth on some of these shows he goes on. And he'll start crying and he'll start saying, man, I'm sad. I'm nothing. I'm not a tough guy. I can't knock you out. I can't fight anymore. I'm not this. I'm not that. He cries. Yeah, Don did pimp quite a few. But like Mike Tyson, he cries. He comes out. He's honest. He's like, man, I wish, I wish I can't fight anymore. I can't knock somebody out. I'm not young. I'm not the person. I'm not the champion. He was like, when I was that guy, I was unstoppable. I was untouchable. I was a killer. I couldn't do this. And now I miss that. I miss being a killer because he misses being a conqueror. He's still in his mind. His greatest days are behind him. Mike Tyson, you own more than what you ever own. Mike Tyson, you can do whatever you want to do. Mike Tyson, you get to go on all these shows. They used to make fun of the way you talk. Now they can't wait to hear you talk. You are become a different person, but in his mind, he thinks that he has to revert to being a conqueror. See, it's that gladiator thing, right? It's that gladiatorial thing, right? That I got to get back in the ring. He got back in the ring. He talking about possibly getting back in the ring again to do it again. Why? Because I can't leave it alone, because that's what made it, right? Like, you can get testosterone from other ways besides fighting, from other ways besides training. You can get testosterone just from doing masculine things that aren't considered to be sports. There's a lot of things that are masculine that cause you to have testosterone increase as a male, but we're not willing to do those things. In his mind, I have to fight. I have to be owned. I have to be a slave. I have to be a conqueror. If I'm a conqueror, and that's where my life is. He'll cry about it. He'll be honest from time to time. Yeah, he's been manipulated. But he's crying because they never taught. He never had a father figure. See, Customato was not a father. To him, he was a father figure, and sure, he was better than what he had. But real talk, Customato never was concerned about, let me teach you as a man. This is what's supposed to be. But by the way, maybe he did, because in Customato's culture, that's what you do. You conquer. So, hey, I taught you to be conquered and to conquer. And that's it. But now you got a grown man who's crying because he's still saying, I can't conquer the way I used to. He never became more than a conqueror. In their society, they create things and then conquer them, including their gods. Mike Tyson was a god. They created him. They pushed him as such. They couldn't wait. They said he'd never be defeated. Once he got defeated, he lost some of his mystique, but they were still hanging in there. Then the rape charge happened. He came out and he was never the same person again. Right? And now he's not their god. And now this guy who could never do wrong, even though he did nothing but wrong, but could never do wrong because he conquered. The second that he can't conquer anymore, hey, man, I'm sorry. You remember when you were a god? Let's bring you on to talk about this stuff. Man, I wish I could tell you how many brothers I've talked to in my life where you hear them stuck on, man, back in 1970s and the 1980s, man, when I worked for da-da-da-da, man, I used to do this, I used to do that. Man, the 80s, I used to be blah, blah. Man, back in the 60s, man, I really was doing blah, blah. And, when we were wearing this and we were doing this, and they keep telling you used to. They think that's when they were conquering. They haven't learned that you're more than a conqueror. Your word as a man that's in your 70s could mean more than when you could swing a hammer in your 30s. See, in your 30s, right? When you were in your 30s, you swung a hammer to build a building. Thank you for doing that. There's a lot of people that can live in that, but you could speak a word that could cause generational wealth to happen, right? But you think it's about being a conqueror. Yeah, knowing your worth, knowing your value. Knowing what this worldly system says about your qualifications. You don't have to have qualifications to be much in the world. They think that being a conqueror is it. So you think that you conquered something, that's it. Some of y'all still be talking about, in school, I got all A's and this and that, but it didn't turn out what I thought it was going to be. Guess what? You're more than that. You're more than a letter A on the sheet. Right? Reveling in our prime. And here's the crazy thing about that is, what is your prime? Was it your prime? My prime years are still ahead of me. I'm trying to be 150 years old. My prime years still ahead of me. I'm turning 40 October 6th, the day right after the Day of Atonement, right? And I'm still nowhere close to my prime. Y'all think I'm doing some stuff now. Y'all think SOC's flourishing now. Y'all think that we training some folk up now. Y'all think that we're teaching some great stuff now. Y'all think that I have a great marriage now. Y'all wait to see my marriage when I'm 80 years old. You know what I'm saying? I'm not even in my prime yet. Somebody say 80, you know, I ain't gonna be see. conqueror. You're not even gonna be able to have sex the way that you used to. Well, first of all, who knows? Because if I'm healthy enough, I can. But number two, that ain't the focus. That's not my prime. That's not what makes my marriage right. There you go, Queen, and you can make it, right? All we got to do is eat correctly, think better, make sure that we surround ourselves with the correct people, all those things. That's your born day, October 6th or October 5th. Either way, happy born day early, just in case I forget. Fashionistas, you said they made their jobs or career a security in the form of identity instead of making themselves secure. Yeah. And by the way, every man, okay, October 6th, right? Every man, oh, October 9th, okay. And October 6th. Oh, okay. So y'all both close. Okay, cool. Well, October 6th, that's the same as mine. October 9th, awesome. Right. But we're getting to this place of what? Not realizing and recognizing that you're like you ain't even hit what you think you're supposed to hit, but you keep looking back. But guess what? That's why the word says any man put their hand to the plow and keep doing this, you're not worthy of the kingdom. Even if you did, like, watch this, even if you got 30, 40 years of being excellent, you still got 30, 40 more years to go. But people get caught up on that. This is how they become nostalgic. Watch this. Donald Trump, make America great again. Right? But a lot of people don't realize that was just nostalgia. Ronald Reagan, when he ran for president, he ran on make America great again. That was it. They ain't do nothing new. People talking about, oh, make America great again when it has ever been great. Y'all were having the same argument almost 40 years before that. Right? And 40 years supposedly supposed to be a generation. So they literally waited one generation to have y'all have the same fight. They created the same thing, created the same circumstances, created the same, by the way, Donald Trump, popular on television, all that. Ronald Reagan, popular in movies. They created the same situation and then conquered with it. We're going to conquer America this time. We're going to make it great again. You just told everybody when they 36 years ago, you were going to do the same thing. Like, who you out here fooling? But see, you got to be more than a conqueror. You have to outthink the conqueror. How you doing, Cookie? Thanks for being on. Right? You have to outthink the conqueror. Put away those childish, immature things. They legit did the same exact thing that they did before. Woman out there sexually active with Ronald Reagan. Woman out there sexually active with Donald Trump. Ivanka Trump showing all that. Oh, you say, well, no, Nancy Reagan, she was a goddess. She was a saint. She could have never done anything wrong. Shoot, y'all know that there's a rumor out there, not even a rumor anymore. We know it to be true because there's too much evidence. That Ronald Reagan wife used to be out there giving out them, how do I say this? I don't even know if you can say this lately, giving out them BJs. There's a nickname that they started giving her in modern times now because they found out how many of them she was giving. Oh, wow. They started calling her the throat goat. They gave you the same thing. And then Ivanka came up here and she was basically buck naked on everything. They gave you the same thing. It was known that Nancy Reagan was in there probably when she was in the White House too doing those things. I'm just saying, go look it up. You got to think more. You got to be more than a conqueror. They gave you the same thing. And people was out here arguing the same stuff. Oh, my goodness. He's doing stuff for big business. He's going to be the end of the world. Oh, yeah, we're going to fight against this. Well, white people are good people too. It's the same thing. Yeah, Too Short. Too Short has it as a lyric in one of his songs. If you're a Too Short fan, look up. Matter of fact, here's something. I'm going to Google it myself just to make sure that I'm not sending you on a wild goose chase. But let's look up Too Short, Nancy Reagan lyrics. If you look it up, what do you get? I can't say all this stuff out loud, but what it says? So you mother effers that I'm going to change my style. So what are you saying, Todd? To all you B's, H's, and all that. Here's another rap that I'm ready to spit. It goes like this. My name is short. I'm tearing up like never before. Pimp slaps, making snaps, cold cash money, and too short raps. Oakland, California, that's where I'm from. The city where the boys say you don't want none. But if you do, I'm gonna tell you this: ain't really want to roll so hard all the time. You and that B playing too short rhymes. If you ask me what it's all about, I'll say it's about the money. But if you ask me, could you have some? I'll say it doesn't concern me. Ronald Reagan came up to me and said, "Do you have the answer to the United States economy and the cure for cancer?" I said, "What are you doing in the White House if you're not selling cocaine? Ask your wife, Nancy. I know she'll spit that game." Like one night she came to my house and gave me a blow. You know what? She licked my up and down like it was corn on the cob. What is what is life? It's too short. I play the bees like it's a sport, right? Okay, so I won't go into any more. But y'all see that? That's even in the too short lyric. He's saying, and that was based off of Ronald Reagan. Like they did, like even Donald Trump did. He brought people into the White House, right? And he said, "Hey, Kanye, hey this person, hey that person, hey Steve Harvey, blah blah. Come on here, take a picture with me, and then let's discuss the problems." But really, it's a picture thing for me to take. Well, back then, Ronald Reagan did the same thing. Hey, Too Short, come on in. And Too Short telling you straight up. Too Short's telling you what? He's telling you what? He's telling you, hey, I had a meeting with Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan tried to do this whole thing in public and stuff and act like this and that. But when we got behind closed doors, I told him straight up, like when he said, "Hey, what are you going to do? Or what do you have an answer for all the stuff that y'all do over in Oakland?" Remember, right before that, the lyric says, "Hey, they tell you that you don't want to come and have none with us," right? So he says, "Hey, I have this meeting with Ronald Reagan. We have this meeting. What happens in the meeting?" He starts to say, "Hey, do you have a suggestion?" Just like they try to hit you with now, just like they were hitting you when Trump was in office. You're always talking about problems, but you don't have any solutions, as if you can have solutions without a problem. You need a problem to have something that is called a solution in order to get an answer. But anyways, so he's talking to him and he says, "Hey, I told him straight up, basically, you wouldn't even be, instead of focusing on us selling crack, right, which you put in the streets." But he didn't say it like that. He's saying basically, hey, you wouldn't be here if you weren't selling cocaine. In other words, he's saying, I'm from Oakland, I'm a drug dealer. I know, before everybody else knew about Iran Contra and he almost got impeached, he's saying, I know as a drug dealer that the only reason crack flows through these streets is because you wanted to flow through these streets. And since you wanted to flow through these streets, don't go ahead and talk about it. Matter of fact, if you really want to be able to discuss this, Nancy Reagan, your wife, who be giving out blowjobs all the time, right? That's what he said in his lyrics. She be giving out them BJs all the time. Well, if she's giving out them BJs all the time, why don't you go ahead and have her give me one? Right? Like that's what he's telling you. And people didn't even realize what he was saying in the song, but it was well documented and is well known. And before Ronald Reagan met Nancy, she was somebody that was known in her community for being somebody that gave out not just BJs, but the frat boys she was with, they said she gave out the best BJs. And all they did was give you the same thing. Donald Trump, Ivanka Trump gave you the same thing. You see? What you say? You said you see it, dang. You were listening to that song yesterday. Yeah, like they was telling you the same thing. Said it's symbolic symbolism, and people believe visual actions more than verbal. It's their history. Short didn't have a meeting with Reagan like Dr. J played basketball. Okay, Too Short never had a meeting with Ronald Reagan. Okay. Ronald Reagan never flooded the streets. See, once again, so if you want to go ultimately with the wordplay, okay, let's go all the way down the rabbit hole. Right? I see, because then it's like, oh, he didn't have a meeting. Okay, did Ronald Reagan flood the streets with cocaine, with crack in the black communities or in the big cities? Specifically in cities where they were where the overpopulation happens with black people. right? Like, so the symbolism you're talking about is that every time that he had, like, for example, Rick Ross, the real Rick Ross, the original Rick Ross, Freeway Ricky Ross, right? He never met Ronald Reagan, but he did meet people that said that he represented Reagan and Bush. So, yeah, it's symbolism, but it's like, okay, fine. Somebody might not meet me. Somebody might meet my wife, and they talk to my wife, and my wife is speaking on my behalf about trying to get some land and stuff like that for our people. They didn't meet with me, but they ultimately met with me, right? Right. Like Sister Barbara be putting in work and she's able to go ahead and get some stuff because she has connection. And she's so even though the person that she's talking to might not necessarily be talking to me because I have connection with Sister Barbara and Sister Barbara has connection with them, we had a conversation without meeting. It's ultimately what we're trying to say, right? But even in that, I'm not going to get into a place where I have to conquer, right? I have to be more than a conqueror, right? I'm not worried about people who come on here trying to even conquer. See, I don't like the way you're saying that, and it's offensive to me. And you know that it's not exactly the way I would like it to be said. Well, then that's fine. I'm more than a conqueror. If you have a conqueror mentality where you have to take over something or cut off somebody's legs to make yourself taller, then that's fine. I'm still okay with being tall, even if you try to chop my legs off, which you can't. You don't have the ability to, not in this platform, right? But even if you decide to do so, it doesn't mean that I'm not tall, and it doesn't mean that you got taller. You didn't get taller at all. You still short, too short, right? So what I'm right, but you hear what I'm saying? You got to be more than a conqueror in this system, in this community, in your way of life. You're dealing with people who create things and they conquer what they create. They ran out of stuff to conquer. You said Reagan was in charge and allowed and sanctioned those drugs. Didn't speak directly, but was in power. Yeah. And by the way, that's why Reagan pretty much got impeached. We don't want to call it impeachment anymore. How you doing, Tuckwa? Right? We don't want to call it impeachment anymore. But that's what happened. People forget, we act like this stuff is so long ago. Tell me about something that happened recently, but you say never forget September 11th. Tell me about something that happened recently, but you want me to celebrate July 4th, 1776. Tell me about something that happened more recently, but you say support the troops, Memorial Day, even the fallen soldiers. Right? Cognitive dissonance, or when you want to be right about something, you change it up. you know, right? But I remember, I'm old enough to remember, even if I know exactly what was going on, I'm old enough to remember Ronald Reagan trying to explain to everybody, not really being able to explain that well because he was already having difficulties with his mental faculties. I remember him trying his best, though, to be able to make everybody feel secure in the fact that their president had not broken the laws that they specifically put in place because they knew what he was going to do. Like, for example, people don't even know this. Let me give Congress some credit. Y'all ready for this? People don't even know that the reason why what Ronald Reagan did that was terrible wasn't just terrible just because he flooded the streets with coke, with a bastardized version of cocaine that was a modified version of it that messed up the black community even worse, and even people in the trailer parks and stuff too. We forget about them, right? So it wasn't just us, but a lot of us got messed up, generation of people, but especially us because we eventually got put in prison for it and then had Clinton come behind in agreement with it and get that 3 strikes and you're out stuff that really messed up our neighborhoods and our fathers and our children and our lives and a lot of stuff. And thank you for the love. Let's go a little deeper. Let us go a little deeper, if we may. If we may. As we read up on this stuff, right? Yeah, we can talk about Noriega and stuff too. And we could even talk about what island was that? Where we were putting together hospitals and schools, and Reagan didn't like it, and they came in and basically like took over the island. Well, I'm forgetting the name of the island. Um, what was that island that he messed up? Not the Bahamas, not Grenada, right? when you look at, we can go into all that, but this is what made it so heinous. When Ronald Reagan was getting ready to become president, everybody could tell he was going to run. Everybody knew he was going to run. Everybody knew he was going to win. It was already done. Like, people be acting like your voting really matters. Like, they already knew he was going to be president. Okay. All right. So watch this. They knew he was going to be president. They knew they were going to have problems. They knew that he was going to go into this whole Iran-Contra thing because he didn't like the fact that he felt the wrong side won, right? He didn't want, it's like with Cuba, right? Like, Cuba actually came to America. Fidel Castro actually wins, comes to America, says, we need democracy, and can you help us with stuff? America says, we don't like the fact that you won. And so therefore he goes to Russia, becomes a communist, and hopes that at least somebody can help his people to be able to eat since they don't have food, right? But he came to America first. Same thing happened with, Cuba sent their special ops people. There's a lot of Cuban blood that was spilled on behalf of African nations. That's why a lot of African nations love Fidel Castro. That's why Malcolm X went down there and loved Fidel Castro, right? And talked to Fidel. The reason is because he took care of a lot of African nations. They fought the CIA for us and with us. The CIA was over there tearing us up to make sure that we stayed under European rule. Fidel Castro was like, no, we're going to send over our people over there. And a lot of special ops men and women died for us. So we don't have a lot of us, even though I'm not saying Fidel is obviously a perfect representation of us, but I'm not going to hold you. Fidel did a lot more for us than America ever did, because America still got the CIA over there killing us. Right? They took over where Belgium left off with Lumumba and killed Lumumba. How you doing, Brother Eugene? Thanks for being on again, right? So the same kind of thing happens when they knew that when Ronald Reagan came in, he didn't like who won over in this whole Contra thing, right? So they had actually made laws before he became the president. They knew what he was going to do. They knew what he was going to do. They knew what he was about. They already knew. So they literally had made laws before he became president saying that basically, hey, we're not going over there. We're not going to help them out. We're not sending soldiers. We're not sending weapons. They wrote it out. It was effective law before he even became president. His own people, his own Republican Party was like, yo, Reagan going to win. Fine, we're going to get this and that or whatever, but we can't be involved in this. Like, he about to do some stuff that's extremely dastardly, and we can't have our names on this. So they basically like put that stuff in the law before he got there. That's why he did the Iran-Contra thing. And that's why he sold the drugs that he did over there, right? He basically sets it up where he takes cocaine, has it where crack goes into places. And even if he didn't come up with the whole plan himself, he had to have help to come up with it, but he okayed it. Bush okayed it as well. Remember, CIA connection with Bush, right? So Bush okayed it, he okayed it, and they basically would check up, to have people check in with them from time to time, who would be the go-between, the Ricky Rosses of the world and everybody else, right? So when you have these things going on, what are you dealing with? You have these things going on. So now he comes into power. He knows he can't directly just say, hey, I'm going to try and put pressure on the Senate. I'm going to try and put pressure on the House of Representatives, et cetera. I'm going to put pressure on Congress for them to say we got to go to war, because they already said we are not going to go to war. We have this in law. We're not going down there. So what does he do? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make money off of selling this. I'm going to take this cocaine. We're going to chop it up more, and we're going to chemicalize it way more than what it already is, and we're going to sell it to black folks. So we're going to give them genetically modified chemical drugs, right? We're going to make a whole bunch of money off this. We're going to still make the money we're making off of cocaine, because we've been making money off of them coming in and out the states anyway, right? Then we have people who sell weapons on our behalf, right? So what's going to happen, especially when you deal with, now, where does Iran come in? Iran has this deal where they take hostages. Right? They lied to you, and they said Jesse Jackson went over there, or Muhammad Ali did this. They put some black faces on this stuff for you to make you think it was something else. But the reality is that they were like, yo, help us out, make us look all right with this, with these hostages and stuff, help me to look strong. We'll send you some weapons. Right? The weapons were paid for out of the drug dealing. And then also they had, and also, right, even some of the weapons that happened too, because there were weapons that kind of went both ways. We're told to focus on one side of weapons. Weapons kind of flow both ways. They end up giving the hostages, but also what happens at the same time is that they're sending weapons over to the people that they want to win. They're sending some people, but they can't really send to even their special ops people. They can't really even send that much, but they're sending a bunch of weapons over there so that who Reagan wanted to win would be in power. And that's what he got in trouble for. The Grenada thing was even its own separate incident where he didn't like the fact he wanted certain people to be in control over there, but the person who was in control was actually building schools, making sure they were getting educated, things like that. That was a no-no. They were supposed to be a stupid, poor region to where America was able to make money off them, and others were as well. And so they couldn't have them come to a place where they were more than conquerors. They had to remain conquered. So they sent a bunch of people in there. Messed up everything basically in a couple of weeks, in a couple of days. It's pretty much already over. All these things that we're doing for their people. People still over there struggling because of Ronald Reagan. He was going to make America great again. That's how he did it. That's what he ran on. Make America great again. And even his own Republican Party was like, yo, if he's going to make America great again, he's going to do so with putting us in some wild stuff we don't want to be. That's why he got impeached, because they had already written laws to say you cannot do what you're about to do. And he still tried to circumvent it. The only reason why he got saved is because of Oliver North. Ollie North, some of y'all boys. Some of y'all love Oliver North was on Fox News for the longest time. The reason why he got that gig is because Oliver North took the fall and his secretary shredded the paperwork. They couldn't get proof. So since Oliver North was willing to take the fall, but they couldn't really prove too much of it because the paperwork they needed to was shredded by his secretary, they gave Oliver North his pension, and they said, we'll give you a job at Fox News. Not for life. He just got fired, I think, recently. But pretty much a whole lot of his life, he living fine for the rest of his life because he took the hit that Ronald Reagan should have took. These are conquerors. And if you're going to come out of that, you got to have a mindset that's more than a conqueror. Right? Don't become a conqueror. Oh, yeah, they shooting up people. We just going to shoot up people. Like, we shoot up each other because we got a conqueror's mindset. If you're going to shoot because you're more than a conqueror. Shoot because you're defending your own land. Watch this. Like, brothers, stop dying on the street corner. You know what I'm saying? Stop dying on the street corner. I represent 8th and West, and I represent 9th and whatever. I represent, over here. Ain't nobody going to mess with this part of MLK 3700 block. We got that over in Southeast. Don't come over here with that. You know what? Better not nobody be around this part of Brooklyn. Over here in Brooklyn, we don't play around there, right? Don't come around Flatbush and talking blah, blah, whatever. We over here, we do this. Well, we Crip, we a blood. Don't come over here, cut, thinking you're going to do blah, blah. Like, that's foolishness. It's not even yours. They got you fighting each other over stuff that's not even yours. Fighting each other. I'm a Christian. I'm a Muslim. Fighting each other over what? They don't hang you because you're Christian. They hang you because you're black. They don't hang you because you're Muslim. They hang you because you're black. They ain't put drugs in your community because you worship Allah or Allahim. They did it because you were black. I'm sorry, you said Mandela said the same thing. He supported the countries who supported him when they needed it. Yeah. You said Clinton kept the shop running. Barry Seals did drop in Arkansas. Oh, yeah, most definitely. Matter of fact, if you go with Clinton, Clinton's more sinister. Like, even with all the presidents. See, we talked about it before, but even all the presidents, if we were just I don't know who somebody start with. I guess I was talking about Eisenhower earlier or yesterday or something. If you would start with Eisenhower and just go through all these presidents, do you know that the Vietnam War has never stopped and it started before you knew about it? Like, go back to Eisenhower and look at Vietnam and see what's been going on. Never stopped. These are conquerors. They even create things to conquer. And they created gods, and then they said, now I supersede God. They created their own gods, and then they said, now I don't need my gods anymore. Well, we didn't need your gods in the first place. You created them. Now you don't want to worship what you created. Make it make sense. Ultimately, you created them so you could become the gods. All the stories that you hear about in the temples as far as the Greek gods or the Greek deities and the Roman deists and stuff like that, or what we call gods. And you hear about, oh, a storm would be brewing in there, or there'd be so much stuff, or there'd be smoke and stuff like that. They perform big magic tricks. They had people that would be underneath the statues, doing like you do now. You learned how to make certain types of paper and stuff bend back and forth, or certain type of material bend, and it sounds like thunder, or they turn rain sticks over and stuff like that. They'd have water that would pour out of the little things that had holes to where it would imitate rain. Right? They created fire where somebody would literally, light a fire underneath and then have it open up and even be able to push some of the flames in such a way where it looked like it was kind of like a torch and stuff. Like they had all these things. We know this because we've seen, the remainders of the buildings that they had, and we've been able to study what they had. They were given magic tricks. They were Jannies and Jambres. It tells you about that in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 7. That you have to be careful about these people that are going around who are basically just magical practicing priests who try to find women who don't feel secure, and they try to entice them with tricks, right? And who have all these burdens, these sisters that are not secure, to have burdens on them and stuff. That's why the word church means circus, by the way. Circus is the same root word. And these churches, they have a bunch of women. I'm not trying to say women are foolish or stupid or whatever. I'm trying to tell you that's why your churches are not masculine. That's why your pastors are no longer masculine. I'm not saying that they shouldn't cry, this and that. I'm talking about, you got a lot of pastors that you look at them and you're like, some of your behavior is questionable as far as masculinity. As far as our culture's masculinity, I know somebody's going to hit you with that. Our culture, it's okay for us to represent our culture, our gender, our genre, our style too. That should be represented as well. And in our culture, we don't do that. Thank you for being part of the community. Crowd dizzy or crow dizzy. So most times people focus on the wrong things. It's been over 40 years still reeling from the effects. Shalom, Just Banks, how you doing? That name, or that is name of the game, keeping them divided. So what about Molech and MLK? We still to sacrifice the youth on those streets. If you're talking about what they call Malak, because even in that you got to be careful which thing. Like culturally, if we're talking about Malak, it just really means king. But there were some people that use that word king to mean a specific, deity, spirit, etc. And that spirit, even on the Rothschild flag, I don't know if that's what we're talking about exactly. But yeah, you have to be careful with some of those things for sure. I don't know if we're talking about MLK as far as his sacrifice or him being boule. And even the thoughts as far as that, I'm a little off. He said we thought he was under the right tent, but we were under MLK Malak's tent. Yeah, yes and no. MLK, to be honest, was pretty ignorant. At the end of his life, he got killed because he started coming out of ignorance. Now, I'm not saying he didn't have any intelligence, but MLK was ignorant of a lot of different things. And at the end, he even says, I fear that I brought my people into a burning house. He thought that integration was the way to go, but he realized that integration caused more harm and burning towards his people than it would have to have just had them been segregated, keep their own land, keep their own businesses, stuff like that. Because if your people still think that the white man's ice tastes colder, why would you want to integrate? If you integrate, that means that they're going to leave their businesses, they're going to leave their communities, and they're going to go to something else, even if it's dirtier. But hey, it's dirtier, but it's white. You said, how long will this mindset last for our people? Well, a lot of our people are already coming out of it. And really, it goes to this. I would say, how long are we going to continue to live in the same manner that we've been living in? Or how long are we going to not teach this? Because I'm not looking for the school system to teach what we're teaching today. They're not supposed to. Right? Like, I'm not looking for the school system to teach this today. I'm not. So it said IUIC. Are we talking about what, Israel? Israel Unite or something like that? And what about it? I'm not sure what you mean by IUIC. But yeah, like we have to. So once again, we're talking about a culture that created their own gods, and then really did so to defeat those guys that they might be the gods. So the question has to become: Are we going to use the same tools that they've been giving us, which does nothing more than make themselves gods? Or are we going to say that there's an Elohim that's greater than that? There's a culture that's greater than that. There's a mindset greater than theirs, because they are conquerors. However, we are more than conquerors. Right? Like that's more so what I'm talking about, as far as, I'm not worried about segregation per se, but it's okay to separate fact from fiction. Right? And we are in this weird place where we won't admit that there's fiction. Like, we won't even admit that the United States corporation is a physical corporation, and that your birth certificate says you are a fictional person. Like, we don't even live in the real world. You know what I'm saying? We have a real poor mindset even concerning that. Right? We have a real poor mindset concerning that. So first things first is, once again, realize you're more than a conqueror. You got to identify the conqueror. If the conqueror is the United States corporation, what are you going to do to be more than them? Right? Whether it's through paperwork, whether it's through your land, whether it's through what you're going to grow, whether it's through what you're going to teach, whether it's through what you're going to do generationally. Like, for example, we don't have a more than conqueror mindset in simple scripture. Scripture says in Proverbs, wow, I'm forgetting exactly which proverb, but it was a Proverbs 22, verse 6 and 7, possibly, where it says, train up a child in the way they should go, so when they grow old, they will not depart from it. Most people stop there. So they say, see, make sure you train your child up in the way they should go. And yes, that's great as far as some functional things. But what's the context of that verse? What's the very next verse say? Right? What's the very next verse say? So verse 6, train up a child in the way they should go, so when they grow old, they shall not depart from it. The next verse says that basically you got to train them to be what? To be people who are the lenders. Because why? Because the borrower will always be a servant of the lender. So put those two verses together, and it's saying, train up your child concerning equity, concerning business, concerning land, right? So when they grow old, they won't depart from that mindset, and they won't have a mindset that says it's okay for them to be conquered. They'll be more than conquerors. And if anything, they'll be the one to lend money, and they won't be borrowing from anybody. That's the actual verse. So when you look at it as more than a conqueror, you go, oh, okay, that's what it's for. But we don't do that. We don't even do that for ourselves when we read. We just go, oh yeah, we got a conqueror mentality. So we go, okay, cool, trainable child in the way that you go. Nobody even thinks. Like Proverbs chapter 1, verse 3, right in the beginning of Proverbs, it tells you, like, what I'm gonna read Proverbs chapter 1, verse 3. These are things that we supposedly read, but we skip over them in our mind because we don't even believe that they have as much power as what they have. I try to put these out quite often because a lot of us don't even read these things. That's why we say read your Bible, it'll bless you. But that's why we also say you got to know the culture before you read. A lot of people will just say, what verse should I read? What scripture should I read? But if you don't have culture, you're missing this. Here's Proverbs chapter 1. Matter of fact, I'll start at verse 1. And we'll just read some things that you probably read but never thought about, or never stopped on, as far as being a more than a conqueror mentality, because we're conquered. Okay? You said if they taught us finances in school, wouldn't have some of these problems. Yeah. But they teach you finances. They teach you how to count money. They teach you finances. They teach you how to give so that you can go on a trip, right? They're teaching you how to be a laborer, but not how to be equitable. You ready? Proverbs chapter 1, verse 1. The Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David. So what's the first thing telling us? This is a father talking to his son. So yes, Solomon is the wisest to ever live, but he's saying, hey, my daddy taught me some things. It says the Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Yashdale, saying what? To know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding. You need to have a standard that's higher that you can stand under to be able to receive something. So his father told him these things, right? Verse 3, to receive the instruction. What instruction? Of wisdom, of what? Of justice, of what? Judgment, towards what? Equity. Why is it that we have had all these people tell us about Proverbs, but they never tell you about equity? In all your times in church, you never had a Bible study where somebody said, today we're going to talk about equity. But you can't read Proverbs without reading it. What? This is so verse 2, going back to verse 2, to know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding. The verse 3 says what? So if we're going to get wisdom and instruction, perceive words of understanding. How do we perceive these words? Verse 3, to receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, judgment, and equity. And then once we receive that, what does it say after that? So we can to give subtly to the simple, to the young man, knowledge and discretion. You need knowledge and discretion even when it comes to equity. Why don't you have knowledge and discretion when it comes to equity? You read that verse. Verse 5, then it says about equity included in the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, instruction, subtly, all that. But let's make sure we focus on equity real quick. I want you to see this. Equity. Verse 5, a wise man will hear about what? Equity. And it will increase learning about what? Equity. A man of understanding, standing under a certain standard, right? Standing under a standard, right? Understanding. A man who stands under a certain standard shall attain unto wise counsels. Where are your counsels concerning equity? To understand a proverb and the interpretation, the words of the wise and their dark sayings, and the things that seem to be confusing. To understand a proverb, why don't you understand some of these have to do with equity? Why? The fear, the respect of Yahweh is the beginning of intimacy, the beginning of knowledge. But fools despise wisdom and instruction. Equity. Verse 8, now equity in your marriage. How's your marriage going to become something that deals with equity? Verse 8, my son, hear the instruction of thy father and forsake not the law of thy mother. Fathers should be respected when they give instruction concerning equity. And mothers should lay down the law concerning equity. Father says this is the goal for us as far as equity is concerned, and he gives direction. The mother lays down law and says, okay, this is how we're going to make it work. And we're going to do everything that we do. There's going to be something to make sure that this instruction happens. Why? Because the father's instruction of equity comes from him being under a standard of the Most High. If that's not your mindset, you're going to have a problem. Equity starts in the mind. You see, you got to think of this as being more than a conqueror. Proverbs 13:22. The wealth of the wicked, the wealth of the sinner is laid up for me, and I'm just. What's the first part of the scripture say? Equity. What's the first part of the scripture say? You have to think about your children's children. When you think about your children's children, then here comes ways where your mind is going to start and your spirit can start receiving things. You can start living with things with your works. Faith without works is dead. So you speaking something, but you ain't dealing with your children's children. When you deal with your children's children, now the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the just. Don't get mad at the wicked when the wicked's family members are getting paid. You're like, y'all be praying. I know some of y'all do. Y'all be praying and asking and fasting and seeking and and talking to your friends. I don't get it. Why are the wealthy always just wicked people, wicked folk, and wicked folk, and wicked folk? You know what? Some of these wicked folk, they got more sense than you and I. You know what, right? Not anymore. I say I'm getting better, but they got more sense. You know why? Because they always knew to lay out stuff for their family. They always went back to their community. They took this away from us. They told us we were supposed to move out and go to somebody else's school and go to support somebody else's business and not start your own stuff and this and that. But they always made, like, when I go back to the high school I went to, and I went to one of the top high schools in the country at the time. I don't know if it still is or not, but I went there, one of the top high schools in the country. And whenever I go back to that same place and I see that school, I do not even recognize it. You know why? Because a bunch of people who went there, what do? They go right back there and they put right back into the community, so that generations of their children that are going to go to those same schools, or even generations of children that aren't even theirs, but are going to go to the same schools, they make sure that their children's children are going to be here. You know the reason why you say you think that you're like, man, Congress doesn't care about us. Congress doesn't care about us telling the truth and this and that. Guess what? In all your marching, not one time have y'all ever got together and put together a petition to say that we want you to teach creationism in school. Now, some of y'all be like, well, you can't teach creationism in school. Yes, you can. But since you're not about law, you never thought about the fact that you could legit go around to everybody in your community. But the problem is your community don't believe like you believe. See, that's the problem. But you could, right, by law, go around and get a petition. And all you have to do is, you can't force a teacher to teach something they don't believe, which, by the way, if teachers knew that, you could tell the school system, I don't want to teach evolution. I want to teach creationism. But then what you got to do is get the parents on board. If you can get enough parents to just simply sign a petition that says that we want creationism taught in schools, and you make sure that you find a teacher that signs off on saying that they're willing to teach it, you could have it taught in schools. But we don't think about law. We don't think about things like equity and law and what's best for us and how we can sow into our children. We just go, we want you to help us. We want you to help us. Why would a conqueror stop conquering you? You got to think more than a conqueror. The conqueror is under your foot. If they're attached to the devil and you say the devil's under your foot and they get instruction from the devil, why are they above your feet? Why are they above your head? Why are they stomping on your head? Because we think like conquerors, or we think like the people who are conquered. How you doing, Kenza? You said can't blame them. Most times your own people will rob you. Well, most of the time, I guess. I don't know if, it's as many people that we say or whatever, but I mean, that's just in general. If you're living around your own people, you got to be willing to police your own people. That's part of the problem too, is we don't police our own people. So we're used to, when we talk about police statistics or the way that crime works or whatever, we're used to dealing with slave patrolmen telling us how bad it is when they have to deal with us as criminals. The reality is that, if anything, we should deal with our own criminals. He said Romans talks about how the Gentiles take our inheritance because they won't, because they work principles we won't. Yeah. By the way, it says that. It doesn't say you shouldn't work the principles. It doesn't say Romans have more rights and stuff. Matter of fact, Romans chapter 10, verse 1, before you get to confess your sins in Romans 10:9, if you would confess Yahshua HaMashiach and believe in your heart, Romans 10:1 says that it's still Paul's prayer that Israel would be saved. Romans 10:2, it says that, Israel has a zeal for Elohim, but it's not according to knowledge. Romans 10:3 comes behind that and says we started doing the same thing they did, creating their own laws and then conquering these laws, making our own versions of Elohim and then gods and all this stuff we got into, and conquering them. And now we say the same thing, even though in Kemet, even people who want to be Kemetic now, they say, yeah, the black man is God. We don't have gods. We had netchers. They're different. They don't even sound like that, right? They don't act the same. But Romans 10:3 says we got into all that stuff too. And so now Romans 10:4, the law that was supposed to be for us, is no longer really effective because we don't know what we're talking about. And then Romans 10:9 says you got to get you, before that, it says you got to get yourself in order. So by the time you get to Romans 10:9, okay, if I confess, Yahshua HaMashiach, if I confess him, confess means homologio, the same logic. If I would have the same logic that Paul just talked about, Israel must be saved. We got to start having the zeal for the proper Elohim and not just for anybody. We got to stop mixing and matching these laws, and we got to get back to an effective law. Then through that, we can confess who Yahshua really is, and he becomes Adon. He becomes our Lord. And as our Lord, now we, as a fellow heir to whatever he has with him, we have a right to be able to realize that the Father raised him from the dead, because that belief now opens up the door. Since Yahshua is the dial at the door, it opens up the door for us to be able to have eternal life and not have to experience the second death. Therefore, we'll be alive for eternity. Since that's the case, Romans 10:10 behind that now comes behind it and says what? Now we got to make sure that we realize we still ain't all the way there. We're on our way to righteousness, which means to be in right lawful standing, or even right legal standing at times. And then also means that we are becoming salvation. Salvation is when you finally have finished being salvaged. We're on our way unto those things. Now you get to Romans 10:13. So if anyone who calls upon the name of the Lord, they shall be saved, rescued. Verse 14, but how can you be saved if you don't believe this? How can you believe it if you haven't heard? I'm sorry. How can you believe it if you haven't heard it? Right. Verse 15. How can you hear it if it hasn't been preached? How can it be preached if it hasn't been sent by a preacher? Because how beautiful are the feet of those who preach and teach this word of Yah. Now, verse 16 says, let's go back to Isaiah 43, verse 1. It's just like Yesaiah, or Isaiah, or Isaiah, some of your versions say, where it says that who hath believed our report? Ain't nobody believed it. And people can't believe it because they still in conquered mode. Right? We still conquered in our mind. Well, Paul is talking about somebody where they've been conquered in a sense already. They've been conquered as far as Rome. But Paul is saying, like, we need to get back to who we were. But people will say, right, because they'll argue the logic. Our people will be the first people. Don't listen to Paul. Don't listen to what he has to say. Paul is so anti the kingdom. He's anti-Israel. He's messing things up. Paul legit. I just told you Romans 10:1. Paul said specifically. Yeah, Paul said Romans 9:6, not all Israel is Israel, but Romans 10:1, he says, my prayer is still that Israel would be saved. Rewind some though. Paul, what were you saying to Israelite leaders, by the way, in Rome when you wrote the epistle? What did you say? Romans chapter 1, verse 1, we need to be reestablished again. What did you say? Romans 3:23. Yeah, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of Elohim, right? The imprint that was once upon us, the glory, the imprint that was on us. Romans 5:8. What did you say? You said that Yahshua demonstrated his love for us, that while we were yet sinners, he died for us. Who was he talking about? Well, Romans 6:22 tells you he's trying to make us free, right? And trying to give us freedom. Romans 6:23, to where the gift the wages of sin was death. However, the gift of Elohim is eternal life. So we had died in relationship, but we have eternal life. Well, where did we go after that? Romans chapter 8, verse 1. Therefore, we're no longer under condemnation. Don't condemn yourself. Yesterday, don't condemn yourself. Anybody else who be grafted in. Why? Because we follow after the spirit now and not after the flesh. We got too much into our flesh where we couldn't even see the Messiah in his spirit. But we got this thing together now. So Romans 8:11, the same spirit that rose Yahshua from the dead. Remember, Yahshua was alive, died, and came back. Israel was alive in Yahweh, ended up dying, killing his own son. Yet we have the ability to be resurrected again. So Romans chapter 8, verse 11, the same spirit, the same Ravak HaKodash, the same Holy Ghost that raised Yahshua from the dead shall dwell within you and quicken or make alive your mortal body. So we feel like we're dead, but really we can be made alive again and have access to the Holy Spirit for the first time, where she doesn't hover over us for the first time since Adam lost it, but she can actually be inside of us. Now that she's inside of us, Romans chapter 8, verse 18. So the suffering of this present time that we're going through is not worthy to be compared to the glory which shall be revealed. Romans chapter 8, verse 19 now says that the creature is waiting on the manifestation of the sons of Elohim. In other words, we are the children and they are the creature. And the creature can be grafted in and can be adopted into sons, but first we got to get it together. You don't believe that? Look up Revelation chapter 7 and you tell me who needs to be sealed, starting in Revelation chapter 7, verse 4, and then tell me who's going to be grafted in later on at the end, towards the end of Revelation chapter 7. Right? How you doing, Sister Carrie? Right. Then after that, then all things work together. Romans chapter 8, verse 28. And now Romans 9:6. Yeah, not all Israel is Israel, but Romans 10:1. It's still my prayer that Israel would be saved. But people who are going to go outside of context are going to try to use Pauline epistles in a very Christianos manner to be able to argue. And so our own people fall under those same studies, trying to use those same tools to be able to say, see, this is why they're trying to conquer you. This is why they're trying to conquer you. Don't listen to Paul. Don't listen to Paul. Don't listen to anything in the New Testament. Don't listen to Paul, especially because Paul is somebody who hates. Paul just started telling y'all why Israel's got to get it on track. Well, the first Saul didn't have the Holy Spirit. The first Saul had, or if you're talking about King Saul, the Holy Spirit could come upon him, right? But he wasn't in a relationship with the Most High to where that was even a regular thing. So yeah, he prophesied, and a couple of times you see some great things happen to him. But he let pride get in the way to where he was separated from the Most High, and ended up not being protected, which is why he throws himself upon his own sword, because he had nothing else, to protect him, and he didn't have the courage. Well, I don't even say the courage, because I don't know what I've done in this situation. If I know I'm about to fight thousands of people or whatever, I don't know what I would do. But at the end of the day, he was, he tapped out. Right. But a lot of us, once again, we're under a conquered regime, a conqueror's regime. We live like conquerors want us to. Conquerors don't want you to live free. Conquerors want you to live conquered. And we live as conquerors do. What did I say? We live as conquerors do. What did I say? We live as conquerors do. So most of us are living with a conquered mentality, but you have to be more than a conqueror. So if anything, study conquerors so you can know who you need to be better than. And then once you see who that conqueror is, figure out how to be better than that conqueror. If you're listening to motivational motivational speaker, all they talk about is how to be better than, nobody's as great as you, nobody can do this, nobody can do that, you're this, you're that, see it for yourself, everybody's going to do this for you. Yeah, everybody said this, but that's okay, my story, blah, blah, this and that. If everything is about conquering, then you might want to figure out how to be better than that. Why do you love Malcolm X? Because even if it took his life, he wanted you to be more than a conqueror. He died ultimately because he was going to go over and sue the United States of America on behalf of you. That's why you love him. He saw what conquerors were doing to you, and he wanted you to be more than that, right? Why do you love Marcus Garvey? Because Marcus Garvey had uniforms for you and said that we should be one diaspora. You said you think Paul's teaching was for the new convert. Well, Paul's teaching is to be able to help the new convert and come in, for sure, most definitely, to help those with Gentilic faith. And he himself was a Roman citizen, so he was a dual citizen, so he was more capable of doing some of those things. But Paul also says a lot of stuff about Israel that we just skip over because we don't think about the context, right? Like Paul, we just quoted Paul quoting Isaiah or Yesaiah, excuse me, or who we call Isaiah, but we don't listen to it because we're just like, oh, it's just for the new convert. No, like Paul said, who has believed our report? He says the only reason that I can teach this to you because it's our report. Still my prayer that Israel would be saved. Still my prayer that, hey, Romans chapter 8, verse 19, the difference between the creature and the sons. You can be adopted in, but God starts with the sons. By the way, this is just continued teaching, right? Revelation chapter 2, verse 9. Who is it talking about? Israel. I know you think you're poor, really you're rich. I know about your tribulation. I know you've been to prison. I know you've been suffering, but the suffering in this present time. Basically, it says it's a little different. But if you can suffer through these things, and there's something waiting on you. And it says that there are people that say they are you and are not. Romans chapter 3, verse 7. Now, I know this isn't Paul's teaching. I know we're going to John. But Revelation chapter 3, verse 7, it tells us that Yahshua is the one that's true, holy, and has the key of David. That key allows him to open doors and no man can shut doors and no man can open. And then when we get to verse 9, it literally says the same thing. I know there are people that say they are you and are not. The reality is that they're going to come and learn at your feet, and they're going to begin to learn how to worship. And I'm going to show them that I've always loved you. Go to Revelation chapter 7. The world's supposed to come to an end. The first, but an angel comes out and says, no, we don't want that to happen. Israel must first be sealed. Who is it? Or somebody must first be sealed. Now, who is it that needs to be sealed? Read verses 4 for a little while, then you get to all 12 tribes. And after it finishes that, then it says, now that they've been sealed, everybody else can be grafted in. What does Paul talk about? 1 Corinthians chapter 11, before we get to the whole thing. On the night that Christ took the bread and he broke it and said, eat, this is my body, etc., that we like to use for communion scripture. Well, before that, read when it's talking about being grafted in. The only reason you can do what the Israelites do, because it's not supposed to be communion, it's supposed to be Passover, Pasacheh, right? But people are so into communion, something that was made up after the fact. They created something else and then conquered it, right? But before that, it was Passover. And so that's why Paul even says, if you try to eat or drink, like it says, if you're hungry, first eat at home. Right? If you're thirsty, don't come here looking for no drink. If you're hungry, first eat at home. Why? Because if you come here not coming for the right reason and not in and not following the ways correctly, you will eat or drink damnation unto yourself. So if you're gonna come on in on this, he's saying you got to make sure you come on in correct. That's what Paul's talking about. So yes, is he trying to talk to people who are new, or even, watch this, he also talks to Israelites. We forget that a lot of these people who he's talking to, a lot of these places that are in, these are Israelite leaders there at first who are allowing people to be grafted in. We just assume that all these people were from another country. That's not how that worked, right? And even some of the people that were people that walked with Paul for years, or even he raised Timotheus. He said, I know your mama, I know your grandmama. Right? You grew up as my son, So he's trying to teach and reach and talk to people who are coming from something else, or learning about this, or trying to get rid of their other culture, but they ain't there yet. So that's why Paul will then hit something where we think Paul's just being deviant, or Paul is trying to allow people to do something that's not lawful. Paul will come along and he'll say, hey, we can't really judge you like that when it comes to eating meat and stuff. Why? Because you're a baby. And I don't expect babes, right, to eat anything other than the sincere milk. But Paul will also say later on to some of them when they get more mature, he's like, okay, when you're all babes, you got sincere milk. Now that you're older, you should be eating some meat. Like Paul will talk to them, right? And we'll say those things, So when he's talking about that, or even when he's talking about the drinking the blood or the eating the flesh, like somebody said in the comment section, Paul's talking to some people that actually had some cannibalism in their culture. So he's got to be like, ho, like, let me explain this, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, he's doing a lot, but he's also explaining to some Israelites. The whole book of Acts really deals with a lot of this stuff too, where you got a lot of Israelites that are trying to figure out, okay, we've been doing it this way, but now Yahshua sacrifice, the law still exists, but there's certain things that because of his sacrifice that we walk in a little differently, even though the laws are still there. Like they still, for example, Acts chapter 2, Pentecostal movement, right? That's Shabbat for us, right? 50 days after Passover. That was something that they were doing every single year. They didn't start that just after the Yahshua went up into the heavens. They've been doing that every single year from the first Passover, right? So they were able to do that as far as wherever he went, right? They were able to do that every single year as far as after the Passover. So they kept continuing this up. But this time, after the Passover, they received the Holy Spirit inside them for the first time. What's called the day of Pentecost. But the day of Pentecost was a day that happened every year, or the day of Shabbat. So when you read these things, you're seeing a continued conversation, a culture. So yes, Paul is trying to teach, right? But he's teaching conquerors how to become more than conquerors. That being said, I got to take my leave a little early today. Make sure that we're ready to get on the road. And y'all pray for us. Thank you to everybody. We started our classes. Those who have Black History 1, thanks for being on yesterday. We got the recording for you, and we'll try to make sure it's attached to the Google Calendar. Those who are taking Sovereignty 1 and Sovereignty 2, we should have those links up for you on the Google Calendar invite very soon. And we'll be on, we will have our live today on Kofi_42. That'll end at 8:30 or maybe even 8:20, 8:25. It should be real short because on Tuesdays at 8:30, we're going to do our Sovereignty 1, and then at 9:15, we're going to do Sovereignty 2. All right. So for those who are taking both or taking one of them, we look forward to talking to you tonight. Later on, if you're still interested in more information, just give us your information, give us at least an email address, and we can go ahead and send you the info for the classes. And thank you in advance for everybody who's taking them, for being on with us, etc. We appreciate you. Y'all be safe out there. We're getting ready to take our leave from South Florida. A lot of stuff that's been going on weather-wise. It's kind of changed up the game and stuff for us a little bit, but we're thankful and grateful for having the opportunity to be able to be here and meet the people down here. So we've been just about everywhere now in the United States of America recently, this year at least, except for maybe the areas north of Cali and maybe like a little bit of like Wyoming and stuff like that, even though we came somewhat close to those places. So I think we kind of hit everything. Just about this year, we're going to meet everybody else in Detroit. And then after that, we're going to take a little bit of rest from traveling for the rest of the year. So, unless you're in certain places on the East Coast, we probably won't be physically able to say hello. But if we do put together some stuff, feel free if you want to come by and say hello on those places as well. But we look forward to seeing you guys very soon, whether in person or seeing you guys tonight, whatever the case might be. Remember, we got another holiday coming up, Day of Atonement, October. I guess we're doing something still on October 6th for my born day. If you want more information, you're going to have to try and get with the Honorable Alma for the details on that. I'm not sure what exactly is going on. I'm just showing up. But thank you guys for being on. We really do appreciate you. We out in the King community. Every one of you take time out to continue to pray, to keep each other lifted up, to be in the right spirit, the right mentality. Thank you so much. So if I don't see you tonight on Kofi_42, we'll be back here tomorrow on the Rising, 8 a.m. Eastern New York time. I know on Wednesday we need to have some other stuff as far as the conference call information taken care of. We will try to have that stuff for you taken care of ASAP. So, but thank you guys for being on. We appreciate you. And yeah, we'll be talking to you soon. Please check out my wife once again, the Alma Alma, on TikTok, YouTube, or website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She's a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. Keep praying for Yah's Land Project 83. It hasn't been forgotten. It's not necessarily even on the back burner. It just is what it is at this time. We haven't had as much support is what we needed to meet the October 1st deadline. Doesn't mean that we still can't in the next few days. We started working on some things, and I know that besides a little email here or there, many of you have not received what the next step is as far as the fundraiser. So we'll try to get that information out to the people. We haven't done a great work, especially we've been busy late, making sure that we get that information out. I haven't really. To making sure I get that information out to the person who's supposed to be people who are supposed to be calling everybody to check in on things. So we'll get that taken care of very soon as well. All right. So keep an eye out for that. But once again, if you want more information on classes, things of that nature, just look up what's going on and keep looking for those updates. And if you need updates, if you're like, I don't see it, this and that, or whatever, let us know. Finally, final thing I have to say is just to give you a reminder of what's going on. On Mondays, we're teaching Black History 1. On Tuesdays, we're teaching Sovereignty 1 and Sovereignty 2. On Wednesdays, we're teaching Discipleship, Hebrew Characters, and Natural Medicine 1. I didn't really get much response as far as if people wanted to take basic Hebrew again or wanted to take it to add it on. So I guess right now we're not adding that on. Thursdays, we're doing Biblical Law. If we do add on basic Hebrew, it would be on a Thursday, more than likely. If we're going to do it, I need to know in advance or know pretty soon, and we can start adding that in. Herbalism 1 will be on Fridays, and Saturdays will be Solutions from the Black Perspective and classes on marriage. Once again, if you would like to have more information about my wife's stuff, check out Bloom and Flourish, not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She's a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist. You can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest. Bloom and Flourish. BLOOM, the letter N, FLOURISH. Like a bloom, like a rose blooms, the letter N, flourish, FLOURISH. If you want to email her, you can email her at bloomandflourish1@gmail.com as well. So that's the easiest way. Or you can once again just even click on our link tree on the main TikTok page, even on YouTube. Click on the link tree. And once you get the link tree information, just contact us. You can text us, you can email us, and we'll make sure that we send it to you. All right. Or you can even DM us on Kofi_43 or 2, or even if you want to try to use Kofi_44. So just, those are different ways that you can go ahead and get in contact with us. And we thank you so much for doing so. Maybe we can even try and add her, one of her sites or her TikTok page or something to our link tree. But at the end of the day, if you just simply go to the link tree and get in touch with us, we can easily just send you whatever you need. Okay. So thank you guys. We appreciate you. We appreciate the king in each and every one of you. As always, this has been Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant to Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time by being a voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. And so I have the great privilege, opportunity, and responsibility of being in front of you all again. Please remember, as always, yesterday, that you are loved, you are necessary, you are majestic, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. Shalom. And once again, if you want any information on how to get in contact with us or whatever, if DMing, especially if you're on TikTok, if you're on YouTube, all the information in the description box. If you're on TikTok, you can go to our link tree and you can just click on that. It'll take you either to the website or to the YouTube channel, or even to the classes. I think it's still got the old link from the second semester, but nonetheless, you can find out information to contact us. Feel free to text us. Feel free to email us through that. If DMing doesn't work for you on TikTok, that might be easier or whatever, but you can always text us, email us, and we'll get back to you ASAP. All right. Thank you all so much. Appreciate you. Talk to you later. You guys have a great and marvelous day. See you tonight.